truly doubt I can see the words from here, but we'll try. Hi, Ted! I've always wanted to do this. Thank you very much to the women who actually brought this to our doorstep. This is phenomenal. So, many of you have heard my story, not all of it and some of it, but what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to share with you my personal journey into discovering the value of community. And I have to tell you, it has been a very long and wild journey. So in order for me to do this, I'm gonna have to take you back in time, I'm gonna have to take you forward in time, and I'm gonna have to take you right back here again in 18 minutes with a different perspective. Are you ready? Yes. Okay, here we go. We'll start with the first beat of the story. I was born April 10th, 1966 in San Francisco on Easter morning. My family moved to Nevada County, where I was raised. And when I was 18 years old, I graduated from high school, and I was ready to travel around the world. And literally, the day that I was leaving to do just that, I got a call from my mother's doctor saying, "Your mother is dying with cancer. You're gonna have to stay here." Before I knew it, within a matter of days, I was her only sole caregiver. I was giving her 8 to 12 injections a day. I was cleaning out her colostomy, a foot-long incision. And it was only 4 days before she died that she finally gave me her last words, which were, "Reinette, if you're ever going to do anything, do it now." And this was coming from a very hard-working RN who was planning on starting her life at the age of 55 when she was to retire, and she missed it by a year. I took those words quite seriously. I clutched them to my chest. I went bounding off into the world, and I ended up straight at SPD, a local grocery store where I bagged groceries. You had to start somewhere. I started working very hard and saving my money, and of course, while I'm bagging groceries, I was meeting every single person in the town of Nevada City, California, because everybody has to shop for food. And while I was there, I was sharing my dream that I was going to travel the world, and something so important was happening and transpiring. People were patting me on my back, encouraging me, saying, "I believe in you, you can do it." If anyone, they were actually keeping me emotionally and mentally buoyant during a time that I was really suffering. They allowed me the ability to keep moving on. So I'd travel the world, 27 countries, $10 a day, 14 months, and I would come back and I'd have the terrible adventure bug. I was addicted. And I just happened to hear about a bunch of men and women who were going to ski to the South Pole, and this expedition was taking, of course, applications, and I went down to the headquarters and I began to fill out the application, and of course they asked questions like, "How long have you been skiing?" I said, "I've been skiing 15 years, which I think is pretty good for my age." They were talking cross-country skiing, and I was talking water skiing. Then they would ask questions, of course, like, "Well, what's the coldest temperature you've ever been exposed to?" And I said, "Well, I've been exposed to -10, which I thought was pretty good for California." Of course, it was the walk-in freezer where I used to bag the ice at the grocery store. On paper, I qualified. I'd never skied a day in my life. I taught myself how to ski, and within 2 months, I was in par with the rest of the team. But I had to raise $70,000 in 10 months, and I couldn't do it, so the team went to the South Pole without me. And in good Aries fashion, I said to myself, "That's it. I'll do my own expedition. But it's not gonna be men and women, it's gonna be women only, because women rock. And we're not gonna just ski to the South Pole, we're gonna ski all the way across Antarctica." So I moved to Salt Lake City with $14 in my pocket. I'd never organized a camping trip in my life. And in a year's time, I had the top outdoor women in the country on my team. The first woman to the North Pole, Anne Bancroft, the top Himalayan climbers, Sue Giller and Kelly Rhodes. And 10 months after I had them on the team, they said, "Reinette, we've been doing this stuff for 15, 20 years, and you're just starting." So they kicked me off the team, and they went to the South Pole without me. I came back home, I licked my wounds, and I was depressed for a year, because I thought to myself, why bother dreaming if people can take your dreams like that? I came out of it because I realized I'd come a long way in a matter of a few years, and I actually had something. I thought, hey, you can test yourself anywhere, Siberia, Greenland, and I picked Alaska. So in order to make sure that I was ready for this journey, I decided to commercial fish, because I figured if I wasn't tough enough to commercial fish in the Alaskan Gulf, I probably wasn't tough enough to cross Alaska. So the first boat I got was a boat called the Big Valley. The 12 years later, I would see on the Discovery Channel show called The Deadliest Catch sink with my captain and crew members. And I would work this boat for 6 months. and salmon seine. It was 20 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it was burly. And it was the best thing I could do to get myself ready, because my God, I wanted to be alone out in the woods. I was done with humankind, because in all honesty, they seemed anything but kind. So, I'm now ready, I'm training, I'm in Homer, Alaska. I've got a dog, 2 dogs I attached to my waist that are helping me pull my sled, and I'm training. And the owner of the dogs, who said, take the dogs, 5 days before I was to go, said to me, I don't think you can do it, and he took the dogs back. And I yelled at him, fine, I'll pull the sled myself. And 5 days later, down the frozen Yukon River at 55 below, I was pulling a 160-pound sled behind me, pissed off. It was the perfect fuel. However, anger can only get you so far. It lasted me for a couple weeks, but it was so hard. By the time I made 200 miles into the trip, I realized, my God, the cold is really, really, really bad, but the loneliness is unbearable. So I finally came across a gentleman who gave me a dog by the name of Diamond, my birthstone. I thought it was meant to be. And within a matter of a few weeks, we were traveling and generally making 60 miles a day together. Now what happens is I am halfway across the state. My objective is to ski all the way across Alaska. And of course, I get halfway across and something remarkable is happening. The only road I know is thawing below my feet way, way far in advance than what it should be. And I realize this is my only road. I mean, what do I do? And I realize I ultimately have 2 choices. I give up, or I find a different way to continue. I was staying in an Athabascan native village while I waited for the river to break out to figure out what do I do. The Athabascans gave me a little cabin to stay in, and right out my door is a little stick of wood in the snow berm, and I begin to unbury it with my hands, and I pull out the last canoe built by the Athabascans 20 years before, and I say to myself, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build myself a canoe. I had never built a birdhouse before, so this is a stretch. So I go to all the elders and I say, I'm going to build myself a canoe. And all the elders, the word gets back to me, are saying, no, you don't build a canoe because women in our cultures don't build canoes. So I had to go back to all the elders and say, no, you don't understand. Where I come from in California, that's what women do. We're canoe builders. It's our thing. They had the most perplexed looks on their faces. They said, okay, begrudgingly. I got some tools, 3 Athabascans. We went into the forest. We pulled back 3 trees. And finally, they realized, oh, my God, she's going to try to build this canoe. So the elders volunteer Herb, a big-bellied Athabascan missing a front tooth, to have a fatherly talk with me. And we're sitting there on the log that's going to become my vessel, overlooking the Yukon River that's trying to break up. And he says to me, we call you Wonder Woman because of all the miles you can ski in a day. But you build this canoe, and we're gonna call you Fruitcake. So I rip 18-foot-long planks of wood, and I start hand-planing them 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And as I'm doing this, they're passing by, and they're saying, Fruitcake! And of course, Fruitcake! And the children are emulating this, of course, and they're going, Fruitcake! Well, as I would build and rip these planks and hand-plane them down, I would then submerge them in the local pond, as I was told to do. And after 2.5 weeks of hand-planing, I lay them at my feet, and they're over my knees. I have so many of them. And something so tremendous happened, so profound happened, it has changed my life ever since. They stopped coming by saying Fruitcake, and instead they started coming by saying, I got a seat clamp for you if you need a seat clamp. And someone else came by saying, I got some galvanized screws if you need some. And someone else came by saying, I got some oil-based marine paint. You like blue and red. I had just seen the most remarkable glimpse into my humanity. I got to see how we as a people work and how to inspire. So I christened my boat the Yukon Queen. I paddled that baby 900 miles in 11 days on flat water, and I come back home, and I think it's the end of the journey. So I go about my way. I'm living in LA, and I'm studying filmmaking, and at the age of 30, 2 years after I finished my Alaskan journey, I decide to pick up a search and give my gift to myself for my 30th birthday, and I'm going to pick up this search for my natural mother. This is a search that I actually started when I was 11 years old, looking for my mother. I would not find her until I was finally 30. I would find her, and when I did, I would find that she died at the time that I began looking for her, of breast cancer when she was 35. Her name was Jane Funston. So, I discover her, this counterculture hippie from San Francisco who would hitchhike up to Shasta and erect a big teepee with clear plastic so she could show her young son the moon and the stars at night, and she followed her passion by following her paintbrush and her canvas. And behind her, a couple more steps in the family line, was a grandfather, my great-grandfather, who I discovered, and I began to fall into a rabbit hole for the next 10 years because I realized I needed to study this man's life for a specific reason. This man was named General Frederick Funston, 5'2", barely 100 pounds. And he was very well known, especially in San Francisco. There's a Fort Funston and a Funston Avenue, and he was well known when the earthquake happened. He took command of the city. This man, believe it or not, to this day has had an impact on our lives because he was a champion of imperialism. He believed in the white man's burden. He believed in training and actually subduing the savages. He believed in one size fits all, my way or no way. So I discovered this about him, and also I discover more when I talk to my natural half-brother Damien for the first time in Tokyo, Japan. I track him down, and we're having our first conversation. We're giving a synopsis of our lives, and I tell him about my Alaska trip, and that's when, of course, he says to me, now, when you crossed Alaska, that was, of course, after you found out our great-grandfather Frederick Funston did that, right? And I said, what? He goes, yeah, I'm sure he did the same thing. There's a Smithsonian Magazine article, May of '89, of his story. Go check it out. So a half hour later, I had that magazine in my hands. And of course, my great-grandfather had been hired by the United States government to go up to Alaska and collect botanical samples to find out what was up there. This is a total of a 2-year journey. He would, of course, start his trip on April 10th, my birthday. He would then snowshoe down the frozen Yukon River, and along the way, he would shoot and kill a sled dog to eat because he was starving. Of course, I had skied down the Yukon River, and I saved a sled dog from being shot and killed and used him as my companion. Then my great-grandfather, with a couple companions, cut down a bunch of trees and built an 18-foot-long canoe. Of course, I'd cut down 3 trees and built an 18-foot-long canoe. Then my great-grandfather paddled it down the rest of the river, and right when he got towards the end, his boat flipped. He lost most of his botanical samples, most of his photographs, and of course, when I built my canoe, I put little stabilizers on him. So, not only did he do this trip, he did it exactly 100 years before in 1894. My trip was 1994. And he was exactly the same age. He was 27, and he turned 28 along the way. What this told me to do was to stop and to pay attention to Fred. So I spent a decade in my whole entire 30s studying Fred's life. I studied his tactics, I studied his failures, and I studied his successes. I got to study what his legacy would do 100 years later. I had something he didn't have, and that was 100-year perspective of how our actions affect those who are not born. So I study this, I learn about him, and now I come back to my home, and I'm at a crossroads. And I'm thinking, do I want another adventure? Do I want to continue in filmmaking and learning more? What do I want to do? And all that kept popping up in my mind was, I don't like the way the world is going. I'm actually concerned. I don't like the way the world is going. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go to Israel and Palestine, a little hot spot or something like that. So I start studying it. And of course, what do I come across? But with these 2 words my friends had warned me about called peak oil, energy, oil. I'm thinking this has nothing to do with me. I have no interest. And as soon as I learned it, I thought, oh my God, why aren't we talking about this? Our dependency, this is our lifeblood. If we choke on this, we don't have an economy. And I thought, what does one single person do with a huge global issue like that? It's bigger than me, it's huge. And I realized, well, what I can do is provide a space for like-minded people to come together to have the conversation and say, is there a problem? Should we do something? So I literally held an all-day conference on peak oil. I flew in peak oil experts in Grass Valley. We had 200 people show up in 2005. And after that, we held a think tank. And now that think tank 25 to 45 people kept showing up every single week for 8 months straight until the organization Apple came along, Alliance for a Post-Petroleum Local Economy. We began to onslaught this whole entire publicity, public outreach, education on sustainability and local economy, and really a grassroots movement to actually make our economy strong and a very, very, very viable and healthy future. While this was happening, I realized that we were not being represented in our local government, that there was not a voice for sustainability or environment, or even for the community for that matter in many ways. And so I decided to jump into the fire. I ran for city council. I got elected, became vice mayor, and then the mayor. And I thought, wow, I get to pay it forward. I get to pay it back to the very people who supported me when I needed it most. What an opportunity. So what was happening was that this time Apple was doing such a good job, and a lot of people were educating themselves, and they were getting about the importance of sustainability. They were doing all this good work, and we realized we have actually finally reached a point where we need a physical hub. We need a place for people to come to so we're more efficient, we don't duplicate efforts, we're far more effective, and we have a nexus and a clearinghouse for our community. Well, the stars began to align, and of course, a young woman by the name of Molly Dick came along and said, I want to write a business plan for a sustainability center, and I said, you write the plan and I'll get the money. Of course, at that time, Wall Street was crashing. It was in January. There really seemed to be no money around, and within a matter of a few weeks, the person with the money would come to me, and we would lock in ourselves about a $40,000 grant. Now, one of the things that happened is we found a building for this center, and we, of course, rightfully, we conducted an energy audit because you can't be in an inefficient building. And once the audit was done, we were like, woohoo! The building leaks like a sieve. This is great. Before and after photographs. How lovely. And of course, we realized we had no money to retrofit this building. And I thought of the canoe. So Molly and myself and people coming and passing by, we began to gut out this little tiny 800 square foot building. And we began to build our own canoe. Because of course, within 2 months' time, we had no money, we were gutting it out, and we would get on the phone saying, we need a 40-foot beam with a crane, we need an HVAC system, we need a sustainable flooring, we need no VOC paint, we need this. And in 2 months' time, we had garnered $80,000 to $90,000 in free material, resources, and labor. If we had said to the community, we want to raise $80,000 to $90,000 for a center, we would still be raising it. People saw us building the canoe. They brought their C-clamps, they brought their galvanized screws, they were actually here for us. Now what we're doing is, with a great sustainability team from Nevada City that we've put together, we have created this incredible sustainable vision for Nevada City. And this vision is a holistic vision. What that means is we are planning our town with the idea in mind that everything is connected to everything else. That you do think one thing here, it's going to affect everything else all the way around and back again. But how do you apply that to a town? Even though we're small, how do you really apply that to a town? Well, luck would have it, this 30,000 square foot building, known as the Alpha Hardware Building, formerly the Broad Street Furnishings, has now become available. And what we're doing is we are taking that holistic plan and we're applying it to 30,000 square feet. And we figure that if we can't do it in one building, we're probably not going to be able to do it in one town. But I have to tell you, we can see it already. The people who are working on this can see it clear as a bell. And what I want to share with you right now is where we are in this next phase and what I have learned at this point about community. I called up Molly the other day. I'm working with Molly Dick, Tanya Carlone, and the building owner, Gary Tintle, and I said to her, we have 18 minutes to put out an idea out there that we think is worth spreading. What is it that we want to tell people now? So we talked about this, and this is it. Most important thing is the silos have to go away. We have to stop working in compartments. We have to start working together, and we have to start collaborating. That's the first thing. And we have to understand that we're not in this alone, that it is all about community. And one of the most important things is, my definition of community is common destiny. We are in this together whether you want to be or not. And I have to tell you folks, when I was doing my Alaska trip, I was literally out there on the edge, as far away as I could possibly be, and it was there that I would discover my humanity. Because while I was traveling solo, it was anything but solo. It was the trappers along the way who taught me how to actually live like a trapper. It was the Athabascans who gave me the tools and the know-how to build a canoe. It was the Yupik Eskimos who taught me how to catch salmon and to dry it so I could feed myself. It wasn't a solo at all. It was the village that got me across. You can't be on this planet and go it alone. We're in it, and as soon as we get it, we're going to be able to create the world and the vision that we want. And also, thank you. And what we're talking about is the change of culture. We have to understand that we are all here for a reason. This is not an accident. I do not believe in accidents. We are all here to put our best tools, our expertise, and our skills on the table. And when there's someone else who can do a better job, you step back and you let them shine because they are serving the whole, they are serving the collective. And understand that it's not all about my way or no way, it's about what's our vision, and let's just start moving in that direction, and we'll work out the details later. Don't get caught up in the details, and I have to have all my ducks in a row. You'll still be doing this 100 years from now. Ask yourself, what's my canoe? What canoe do I want to be a part of? And right now, the Alpha Building isn't a canoe, it's the love boat. And if there is anything that this planet is screaming for, it's screaming for, and I beg you, please, we need more fruitcakes. Thank you.